Greetings and salutations one and all. Welcome to another night shift with DJ Kevin Steele. How you doing? It's community and finance night. Inviting to call a friend, tell a friend. You can almost guess what I'm going to be talking about if you hear me start out with this track, right?
It's time for us to make peace and stop the fighting. One love, one unity, got to break the bondage.
The sound of China Nicole.
No more borders around me.
Track called Let It Be for Justice.
Slavery. But Marley said it best, stand together and feel alright. But if we fight, let it be for justice. And if we war, let it be for justice. At all costs, let it be for justice. Do what is right, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. No matter what it costs, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. Inequity, disparities, and violence, oppression, racism. No, I won't be silent. No more barriers for we. We will thrive, prosperity. Marcus Garvey said it best. None but ourselves can free your minds. But if we fight, and if we want, let it be for justice. At all costs, let it be for justice. Do what is right, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. No matter what it costs, let it be for justice. 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 No matter what it costs, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. We the people are from royalty. I wish so many of us can see. Keep the culture, be united, stop the violence. Put the power in ourselves, create the franchise. In the news last week, another bomb overseas. I'm so sick of these murders in the streets.
China said, listen, I'm a little bit too tired of what's going on in the news, you know. People want to fight. Please fight for the right things. Fight for justice. At least that. I want to take a moment and say thanks to each and every one of you locked in. Those on TuneIn Radio, the night shift with DJ Kevin Steele. Those locked in on the affiliate stations from across the globe. One Harmony Radio from over there in the UK. Top of the morning to you guys. NIE Radio out of New Jersey. Blessings. Let it be for justice. Displaying the power of music, we have Island Worldwide out of New York. Much love to you guys.
We the
China Nicole
are from
and crew.
Royalty. I wish so many of us can see. Keep the
I want to say blessings to those on the Foundation Reader Network, ClintonLindsay.com.
The franchise. In the news last week, another bomb overseas. I'm so sick of these murders in the streets.
Big ups to those out of Texas on WGLRO, home of the Donnie Walker Morning Show. Taking you from the sheets to the streets on the People Station. Big ups to those on Oliwap Radio, Dusic Media Groups. Much love to you.
Let it be for justice. No matter what it costs, let it be for justice.
I want to say big up to those on PEMGTV.com.
Be for justice.
And of course, those who are locked in here at the home of the night shift, the DJ Kevin Stew, KevinStew.com.
These murders.
So glad to have you. Couldn't do it without you. You have my word, I wouldn't even try.
Why I? Why I? Why I? Why I? But if we fight, let it be for justice. And if we war, let it be for justice. At all costs, let it be for justice. Do what is right. Let it be for justice. Let it be for justice.
So as I get connected with my guest, I want to say big up to those who are locked in on Facebook Live.
Let it be for justice. Let it be, let it be.
How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Inviting you all to call a friend, tell a friend, friends of your friends, friends of your enemies, enemies of your friends, and your enemies. Don't leave them out.
For justice.
Call somebody, tell somebody. It's a night shift with DJ Kevin Stew.
Let it be for justice. No matter what it costs, let it be for justice. 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 No matter what it costs, let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. We the people are from royalty. Royalty. I wish so many of us can see. Keep the culture, be united, stop the violence. Put the power in ourselves, create the franchise. In the news last week, another bomb overseas. I'm so sick of these murders in the streets.
The son of China Nicole saying, listen, let it be for justice. If we fight, if we block the roads, if we protest, let it all be for justice. Don't just do it just because you can and you want to cause some problems and you don't want to go to work. Do what is right and let it be for justice.
Let it be, let it be.
And if you have some people defending you because you have a case in court,
No matter what it costs, let it be for justice.
just pray that you have the right people.
Let it be for justice. Let it be for justice. Let
Let's just hope that what happens in that courtroom
it be for justice. Let
is just about that.
why I
Justice seeking on both parts, prosecution and the defense.
be for justice.
They can work together, you know, but not for each other.
Let it be for justice.
And as we've been seeing, hearing, and learning for the past 2 years, well, for me, firsthand for the past 2 years, with cases like the Rodney Reed case, which we've been talking about quite a bit the past few weeks with the evidentiary hearing that just happened, you know, we kind of have to ask the question, how much justice really was being displayed or exercised here? And with me on the line, I have my usual cohort. Mr. Botinsky himself has agreed to join us again tonight. And I don't know anyone who knows the Rodney Reed case better than David Fisher. I really don't. And though we don't really need to welcome him like that, we're going to do it anyway. David, welcome back. It's
Thank you, Kevin. It feels
your
like
home.
the Olympics.
It should, shouldn't it?
Yeah, you have no audience, but you have the sound effects.
Well, I do have an audience. I always have an audience. What do you mean?
That's correct. I mean, just not sitting next to you in the newsroom. Like,
Right.
You know.
They're not in studio. Not at all. All right. So, and quietly, I love when people use up the phone number before I even give it out, 773-789 Stu is the number you can use to call, text, and get in touch. Of course, do jump into the Stew part. It's what others call a chat room, but you go to kevinstew.com. You don't need to sign up or register for anything. Just go straight there and you're in the Stew part. But numbers to call, numbers to text, 773-789-STEW, 773-789-7839. And quietly hanging out in the wings is a young lady who was in the courtroom last week. And quite opinionated young lady, by the way. But quietly waiting to toss a word in here and there. Josie, hi, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm relaxed now.
Okay, good. Caught you in bits and pieces on that show over the weekend, and her name is on the tip of my tongue, and what's her name, Josie?
Who, Nosy?
No, you called into her show on the weekend.
Oh, Heidi.
Heidi.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard you talk to her. She said that she talked to you.
Yeah, she sent me an email, so we connected. But David, we got some stuff to touch on tonight. We got a whole bunch of stuff to touch on tonight, actually. One of them being the the transcripts from that trial that Rodney Reed was acquitted for. And there are many that say, all kinds of what's some of the arguments, Josie, that they come up with about him being acquitted, that the information wasn't presented properly? What's some of the stuff?
From my understanding, Lisa Tanner was trying to create a narrative that he used the same thing as a secret affair to get acquitted from Connie York's case. And from what I read from the interview with Estrada, who was the defense lawyer, he told a totally different story.
Okay, cool.
So now, Josie, that wasn't an interview. That was the cross-examination at trial. So, the listeners need to understand this. This is what you have before you is the actual trial transcript from the Reed trial back in 1991 in Wichita Falls.
Yeah, I was just I literally just started reading it, and so
but when you talk about it, it's not an interview.
No.
That was the.
No, I was talking about the article that I read on Estrada when they interviewed him for 2020.
Oh yeah, I see.
Yeah.
And went at KAUZ.
Right.
News 6. Yeah.
Right. So
no, you're talking about the newspaper.
The newspaper interview,
Times.
not the trial transcripts, which we have now. Thank you.
Yeah, I just
David.
provided you the full trial transcript
Yes.
from that rape case.
Right. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And that mind blowing. Now, Dave, when the prosecution, Lisa Tanner and group decides, when the state decides that they're going to file a bill of exception to introduce these penalty phase allegations, which apparently helped to prosecute Rodney in the original trial.
Right. Helped to get him on death row.
Right. I'm confused as to why the defense wouldn't bring up something like this, like Connie York. Why they wouldn't bring up something like some of the affidavits.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
They didn't do cross on either one. It was
This is
only
true.
two that they brought up.
This is true.
It was only two that. Huh?
Yeah, this is true. They didn't do cross.
Yeah, it was only 2 that they brought up, and they didn't do cross. But Kendall did say some address it at the end of after Linda got up after her testimony and addressed it. So
Right.
that's pretty much what that was.
Yeah, but the one they put on, they did really try to drive their point home with, was Vivian Harbottle Chapman.
Let's talk about Vivian for a moment,
Nah,
David.
you ought to talk about Linda Sluter.
Wait,
that was really
No,
bad.
no,
Wait, hold on.
do-
Hold on, Josie.
Yeah.
David, let's talk about Vivian a little bit. Because I have some documents here that I can show. So let's talk about Vivian Harbottle just for a moment. Was this one? No, you weren't there for this one, Josie. You caught the information on this one the same way I did.
Okay.
So, Dave, let's talk about Vivian a little bit.
Sure. When Vivian, when I came in to look at this case for the Smithfield Times back in March 2001,
Mhm.
I knew nothing about this case.
Right.
I was given a newspaper, one of their newspapers that had just been published, that Sandra Reed had written a letter to the editor,
Right.
about the upcoming evidentiary hearing that March on the beer can DNA. And they gave me that and Sandra Reed's phone number. I called the Reed house to ask them for permission to look at this case because, I wasn't going to be a Budinsky in this.
Right.
I was doing this as a favor for the newspaper. And I said, yeah, the family asked me in. Well, Sandra Reed never returned my phone call. But at the evidentiary hearing, between the time I talked to the newspaper reporter and left a message with Sandra Reed and the hearing, the Texas Ranger put my driver's license picture on a wanted poster, was showing it around the county. County officials were calling me and telling me, county officials that knew me, warning me that there was something afoot. And then when I heard after the hearing was over that the Ranger took the stand, I thought, that's what this was all about.
Right.
He didn't want me in the courtroom to see him testify, and rightly so. And so then I didn't need the Reed family's permission. Now I had a dog to hunt in this case.
Right.
Now, as I looked at the Stacy Stites case, I became aware of the rapes. I knew nothing about them, and so I started looking at them as well. So after I'd completed the work for the newspaper, I started looking at specifically Vivian Harbottle's rape, because there were documents within the files that raised some serious questions about that. And so I went out and sought out people who were actually witnesses to this and had affidavits done and statements. And when you look at these affidavits now, these were done back in 2001 and early 2002. To the testimony Vivian gave, they run hand in hand. So what Vivian was talking about, she was, she got mad, got in a fight at the bar, she left. She started walking down the railroad tracks going south. And then there were 2 black males following her. One of them left before the rape. Well, that's exactly what these witnesses say in 2001. One of the witnesses that I got an affidavit from was with the rapist. He was the second black person that Vivian's talking about. And he left. He kept trying to tell the guy who ultimately raped Vivian, leave that white woman alone on the tracks and come on, we got to be at somebody's house. And so he, at the cross street, he left and went to the friend's house. The rapist continued on with and caught up with Vivian, and they walked down the tracks to the trestle. The next day, when it was reported that a woman was raped on the railroad tracks, this second person goes, oh my God, that had to have been Pat.
So
he wrote an affidavit discussing all of this, that, she was walking ahead of them, who, the guy that followed her and ultimately raped her was his cousin. And he's writing an affidavit against his cousin.
So this guy is, what's his name?
His name's Bobby Taylor.
Is it Bobby Taylor or David Taylor?
I'm sorry, David. I'm sorry. I don't have those pulled up in front of me. I was trying to pull up this Twitter feed because we'll be talking about that also. So let me pull up those affidavits real quick. I think I might still have them open.
I have
you have David Taylor's statement.
Yeah, I have David Taylor's affidavit right here. Let me go ahead and put that up on the screen for people to see it.
I'm pulling it up right now too. Now, he was the guy who was walking with the rapist, his cousin. If I remember correctly, that was his cousin, or not the other guy's cousin. Okay, affidavits. Where am I at?
So this is a little bit hard to read, but...
Right, yeah, that one's kind of... But if you take the time, you can...
My name is David Taylor. I am over the age of 21. I am the cousin of Rodney Reed and Pat Barnett. During the month of September or October 1995, Pat Barnett and I were walking down the... I don't know what road that is. The railroad.
Railroad. Yeah, railroad.
Back about dusk. Yeah. The railroad tracks about dusk dark. We were coming from... Is that a name of a place?
I got to wait until my PDFs are taking time to open up. Then I begin to open up now.
Okay.
Okay, it should be open in just a second, and I can pick up. I've read this thing so many times, I should be able to walk through it pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah, you've had it quite figured out. I was trying to read it earlier today, too, and I was like, yeah, this is a struggle. Let me go ahead and do some other things in the meantime.
Yeah, right. Okay, let me drop this thing down. He says, my name is David Taylor. I'm over the age of 21. I am the cousin of Rodney Reed and Pat Barnett.
Yes.
During the month of September or October 1995, Pat Barnett and I was walking down the railroad tracks about dusk to dark. We were coming from from the Lone Star Mart.
That's what it is.
I think that is, yeah. It is. We were on our way to my uncle's house. We were at the crossing of Walnut Street and the railroad tracks when we saw Vivian Harbottle on the tracks at Walnut. She was on the right side of the tracks. I shouted of the tracks. Ahead of Pat. Okay, I can't.
Yeah, can't figure that out.
Is it handwritten?
Yeah, it's handwritten.
Yeah, it's handwritten. It's handwritten.
I have it up on the screen right now.
Yeah. It says, Pat Barnett walked ahead, to Vivian Harbottle. They had a conversation. I called for Pat, and he did not answer. So I went ahead and started walking east from the railroad tracks on Walnut.
So this is south on MLK.
Yeah, from MLK east on. But he's going on his way.
Right.
And says over. Okay, I think he says east on from the south street
Yeah.
to my he's describing the street she took to his uncle's house. For
Right.
a few months later, a few months later, Pat Barnett made a statement that David Board had questioned him about the rape on the railroad tracks. Okay, I got to roll to the next page.
Mm-hmm.
Then he later stated that David Board stated that it was Rodney Reed that had raped Vivian. In the back of my mind, I have always been suspicious of Pat Barnett Pat Barnett.
I can't figure that word out either.
Yeah, I'd have to say I saw him on the tracks with her.
Yeah, David Taylor.
He's saying it, no, it says I've been always suspicious of Pat, knowing I saw him on the railroad tracks with her.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
that was the night of her rape. Now, as a companion to this, and oddly enough, as the facts would have it, when let me pull this after Pat, Chris Aldridge. Where is it? There it is. Interestingly enough, I also obtained this was in July 2001, the affidavit of Richard Reed, Rodney's older brother. And it companions Pat Barnett's in that they ultimately backdoor each other. And what Richard says, and you're going to put that one up?
Yep.
Kevin?
Yep.
Okay, and when you reading Richard's affidavit, it says, it was in the year of 1995, I believe it was in the 8th month, when my friend and former co-worker Vivian Harbottle had returned back to work after 1 year. After she quit working in 1994, I was surprised to see her. I asked Vivian, "Where have you been?" She told me that she needed to take a break from there. Meaning Grant.
TFW?
Yeah, they were an oil field company.
Okay, got you.
Says because she had gotten burnt out. She then said to me, "Have you heard about what happened to me?" I said, "No, what happened?" She then said, "Do you know a guy named Pat Barnett?" I said, "Yes." Says, "Pat and I went to school." I said, "Yes, Pat and I went to school together." She said, "Well, he raped me." Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes on. It says she said that she was at Ray's place when she got into an argument with someone there. She then left Ray's place and started walking on the railroad tracks. She said that there was 2 black guys on the track in the same direction she was walking. She said one of the guys stopped and started talking to her, and that the person knew her and also knew her daughter. Now, I want to stop right there.
Mm-hmm.
As it turns out, Vivian Harbottle's daughter, who is older, who was not 10 or 12, knew Pat Barnett.
Right.
But Vivian Harbottle's daughter did not know Rodney Reed. So she had already confirmed that it was Pat Barnett through her daughter at this point.
Right.
So she goes on. She said that both her and the guy she was talking to smoked a cigarette together. Then the person started to come on to her. He then grabbed her by the arms and began to rape her. The rapist's friend, who is also one of my friends, left the scene. Says where he then walked over to another friend of mine, Pat Love's house. I was at Pat Love's house at the same time the rapist's friend, David Taylor. That's the guy who walked, to his, to his relative, and that's Pat Love, and that's where Richard Reed is. He said when David walked through the door, he said, I told Pat to come on and leave that woman alone. He writes, during this time, I didn't know what woman David was talking about until the day Vivian started back to work at Grant TFW. Says, when she told me that the person who raped her was Pat Barnett. Yep. So, and see, this corresponds with what Joy was saying, that Pat Barnett was running around town telling everybody that he raped Vivian.
Right.
So now we have two people that put Pat Barnett as the person who raped Vivian. Now you got to back up a little bit. In David Taylor's statement, he says Pat later told him that David Board pulled him over and told him that they wanted Rodney for the rape.
Right.
Okay, well, wait a minute. Then why did David Board sit on that rape kit of Vivian's and never take it to the DPS?
That's probably because they were going after Rodney. Because it wasn't.
Wait, but then you go back and David Board's claiming that Rodney raped
Vivian.
Angela Hamby in '89.
Right.
And they had the rape kit. And again, neither one of these rape kits were ever turned over to the DPS. You know, in order to prove that and to start a prosecution.
Right.
So what is David Board doing? Is he, judge and jury? These women, both raped women, were deprived of their day in court because of David Board. Regardless of who actually raped the girls, David Board, just on his own, decided he wasn't going to submit it to the DPS. Why? What was going on here?
That's the $1 million question.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. And then when you had earlier in May of '95, David Board submitted garments from Carolyn Rivas, who Rodney was living with. They were boyfriend and girlfriend. And they twisted Rivas's arm to try to get her to accuse Rodney of rape, and she wouldn't go before the grand jury and do it. So David Board had 3 rape kits that were alleged to have been Rodney, or evidence, and only one of them ever got submitted. Why would Rivas, in May of '95, if he had, as he claimed, that Rodney was a rapist of Hamby, why didn't he submit Hamby and Rivas together? And then when Harbottle came up, why didn't he submit Harbottle, Rivas, and Hamby to the DPS?
Excellent questions.
And see, these are, when you start raising these questions, then you said, okay, we've got a problem. Now, currently in Austin, there's a lawsuit against the Austin Police Department because they collect all of these rape kits from all of these women, hundreds and hundreds of them, and never submitted, never processed them.
When you say currently, you mean like right now?
I mean
at
like
this
right
moment,
now.
August 2021.
Yes.
Right now.
Right now. And this has been going on for several years. It started back in 2006 when the Austin Police Department's DNA lab was shut down over questionable practices. And the city council awarded a 1.6, I think it was over $1 million contract with the Dallas County Medical Examiner's Crime Lab to test all these rape kits. Well, all of these women, that were sitting, waiting for years and years and years and years, finding out that their rape kits were never even sent in, then got together and filed more or less a class action lawsuit against the police department for refusing to to process the evidence to find out who the rapist is, because in many of these women cases, ultimately over the years, it was the same person raping many of the women over and over again because of lack of prosecution. Well, David Ward was doing the same thing. He was playing God with these women's lives. And now we're to believe him in what he submitted into evidence?
But
when even the victim is saying that it was Pat Barnett that raped her. And of course, part of that was substantiated by her daughter, knowing who Pat Barnett was, and Pat told Vivian before he raped her that he knew Vivian's daughter.
Yeah.
So Vivian didn't know Rodney.
Vivian's daughter didn't know Rodney.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have another affidavit that is a witness to the actual rape, the night that the rape happened. Let me open that affidavit here. It should open pretty quickly now. Yeah, here we go.
And that one is...
Now this is an April of 2002 affidavit.
Mm-hmm.
This was a woman who lived in a house on the corner of Walnut and the railroad tracks. I think it's Walnut. It's at right. Yeah, it is.
And this is...
It says, "My name is Iris Lindsley.
Mm-hmm.
I am over the age of 21, over 21 years of age. I live on the east side of the railroad tracks, facing north, at 1301 Walnut Street, next to the tracks. I was standing outside of my house one night during the month of September, October 1995. Just turned dark when I saw a young lady walking and stumbling and walking and talking. I'm sorry, stumbling and talking and cursing loudly. She looked like Tammy Longhorn or Horn to me. I don't know who this woman is.
Mm-hmm.
It says appeared to be upset. She was on South Fayette Street, turned left onto Walnut, and right on the railroad tracks, headed south. There were two light poles on one on the west side of the
tracks.
I see. Yeah, she scored of the tracks, and one on the east side of the tracks. She was wearing a light-colored green sweater or jacket and a pair of white jogging pants. I was worried that she might fall on the train bridge ahead. That's the trestle under which she was raped.
Okay.
It says a few minutes later, Pat Barnett came from the north side of the tracks, heading south behind her. About 20 minutes later, Pat Barnett walked, in my yard while I was standing. He was wearing a white ball cap with what looked like to me to be golf club design on it, blue jeans, and a dark jacket. It looked like leather. Pat Barnett had what looked like to me sperm and dirt on the front of his pants. I asked him what was that mess on his pants. He looked down and looked at me as if I didn't know what I was talking about. He was looking back to the south of the railroad tracks. The next morning, the Bastrop Police was all around on the tracks. So she saw Vivian. Describe what Vivian was wearing. Nobody's done that. Describe what Pat was wearing, which what Vivian would have told him the same thing.
Should have.
Saw them, and then saw Pat, leaving the scene. and clearly looking over his shoulder to make sure that now that Iris Lindsley was a witness, looking back over his shoulder, to make sure that Vivian wasn't, pursuing right behind him.
Right.
Because that'd be the kiss of death to him. And apparently, Iris went in and not knowing where Vivian went to call police, but it was the next day that Iris saw the police come in the railroad tracks looking for evidence. So now you've got actual people that were part of the circle. You have David Taylor, who was with Pat Barnett walking down the tracks when they saw Vivian,
right,
and saw Pat Barnett pursue her when David Taylor went to his uncle's house. Rodney's older brother, Richard Reed, was at Pat Love's house when David Taylor arrived and made the comment, that he told Pat to leave that woman alone, not knowing who the hell he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the woman right there on the tracks where everybody intersected, describing how Pat Barnett pursued Vivian on down the tracks and later returned all disheveled.
Right.
But it doesn't end there. Also, in 2002, pull this one up here, one of Rodney's brothers' girlfriends got a job working for Vivian Harbottle, at the time her boyfriend that opened a restaurant in Bastrop.
Mm-hmm.
And here's her statement about how this came about and what Vivian told her.
And this is Jacqueline.
This is Jacqueline Lippy. And this happened in 2002. Says, my name is Jacqueline Lippy. I am over the age of 21 and of sound mind and judgment, and would like to make the following statement. In early August of 2002, I returned to Bastrop, Texas from Portland, Oregon. In late August, my fiance's brother, Ronald Reed, mentioned to me that a new restaurant was opening up called
what's that? Cahoots Grill.
Cahoots Grill. So I called to see if I could get a job. I asked for the manager and spoke to a lady named Vivian. She informed me that they weren't due to open up until September 27th, but to keep in touch with her. So once a week I would call her about the last week of September. I called her one of my weekly phone calls. She informed me that she had been the victim of a so-called Rodney Reed rape case, and that she had testified in Rodney Reed's murder trial. I just explained to her that it has nothing to do with my job performance. On November 8th, 2002, around 10 a.m., I received a telephone call from the owner of the In Cahoots Bar and Grill, David Arizola, Vivian's fiance, offering me a job. I started working on November 11th, 2002 at 6 a.m. Later that day, when Mr. Ariola was running errands, I happened to I got a chance to speak with Vivian.
Yeah.
She brought up the subject of Rodney Reed. She informed me that she had been raped a year before. Rodney had gone to trial, so she had been raped a year before Rodney had gone to trial. She indicated that she could not identify Rodney as the rapist, and that a year after it happened, the Bastrop Police Department and Special Prosecutor Lisa Tanner contacted her and told her that they had frozen the DNA evidence from her rape and that the DNA belonged to Rodney Reed. Lisa Tanner went on to inform her that if Rodney got off on the alleged murder case, she would definitely get him on the rape with Vivian's help. To this day, she still says that she couldn't identify Rodney as the rapist, but that the prosecution convinced her that it was Rodney. Says this is not the first run-in Vivian has had with the Bastrop Police Department. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because the person who's going to come up in this is the officer who testified at that hearing last week about the Sluter rape. And this is the officer who put in Linda Sluter's mind it was Rodney. So let's see what...
Kelly Miller.
Kelly Miller. So let's see what is said about that. It's starting back at the top of this. Says, this is not the first run-in Vivian has had with the Bastrop Police Department. She got a history of rape, assaults, DWIs. She got a long history with them. She has been assaulted and raped by this is Bastrop Police Officer Mike Norman. Now, got to stop there. Let me explain who Mike Norman is. The day before Ed Samela allegedly committed suicide, he went to the Bastrop Police Department and surrendered his guns, his shotgun, his pistol, and his nightstick.
Right.
In April of '96, they passed the Federal Anti-Terrorism Act. And in that act, it requires anybody accused of domestic violence or making terroristic threats to surrender all their weapons. Well, Ed had just been arrested, and a warrant taken out for him and arrested for making a terroristic threat to his girlfriend. So he surrendered his guns. I have a witness who was there, saw it.
I have that affidavit, too.
Yes. The persons that Ed delivered the guns to was David Board and Mike Norman. So that's who Mike Norman is.
Right.
So here, Vivian Harbottle has told Lippy about, her rape by Mike Norman, a Bastrop police officer. And it goes on. It says, while Ed Samala, David Board, and Officer Kelly watched. Says Officer Norman has a scar on his face during the rape incident, while Vivian has a scar under her chin when Officer Norman had assaulted her. From what Vivian, had told me, that Officer Norman had pulled her over one night on her way home off 95 for a DWI. When she pulled over, Officer Norman got out
of his vehicle.
I had to roll my my feet here. Says got out of his vehicle while Officer Kelly, his partner, stayed in the car. Vivian and Officer Norman started to have a confrontation, and then the next thing she knew, Officer Norman proceeded to rape her. She said that she tried to fight him off and that she scratched his face with her fingernails, which produced the scar he carries to this day. Officer Norman retaliated by slamming Vivian's face against the police car, causing her chin to split open. She, too, still carries a scar under her chin to this day. At the same time of the rape, Officer Ed Samala and Officer David Board arrived on the scene acting like lookouts. Vivian was well aware that if she said anything about the incident, she would lose. Officer Norman proceeded to arrest her on the DWI and assault on a police officer. They went in front of Judge Benton Eskew. The judge took one look at Vivian's face and dismissed everything. Vivian also stated that for the weeks after that, Officer Norman would stalk her everywhere she went. she stated she even had to call the police chief, that would have been Ronnie Duncan, and file a complaint against him. After that, he left her alone. Vivian has also stated to me that if she would have known what she knew now about Rodney Reed case and the evidence. Yeah, all the evidence that wasn't told to her at the time of his trial, she would have never testified it against Reed.
So, in conclusion...
So, in conclusion of this statement, I feel that Vivian Harbottle, that's Fry.
She had a hyphenated name, Harbottle Fry, at the time?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And I guess that, she, at that time she married somebody else, and now she's married to Chapman. And Rodney Reed are both victims of
a corrupt Bastrop Police Department and judicial system. Huh.
Yeah. So, now, you look at this, and again, you look at what Vivian Harbottle Chapman testified at that hearing, and you see all these pieces are still in her testimony, and these were taken in 2001 and 2002, 18, 19 years ago.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's funny that in this particular affidavit that David Board, Officer Kelly, Mike Norman, and Edsel Miller are all named.
Yeah, as being present during this assault, and none of them raised a hand to protect her.
Right. Which, to me, now talks about the mode of operations when it comes to Bastrop Police. Because this seems to be a regular thing. And their covering up and protecting each other is also a bit of a regular thing. So, if they could cover this up, what then would prevent them from covering up the murder of one of their own?
Or anything else. If you'll cover up the rape of a woman on the side of the road and then an assault by the officer doing the raping, where does it end? Now, but there's more to this. I didn't send this, but I'm looking at, and I'll send it to you just right after we do this, so you can verify it. I'm looking at an article published in the Bastrop Advertiser on Saturday, August 17th, 1996. This is just a week or so. Ed died on August 3rd. So this is 2 weeks after Ed's death. Says, and I'm going to read from the article. It says, Bastrop officer talks woman out of river leap. Says, quick action followed by a lot of talking helped a Bastrop police officer prevent a suicide last week. Officer Paul Alexander. Now, he's the one who found the Fennell's truck in the high school parking lot.
Yeah, with Ed.
So, yes, with Ed. Yes. Was able to convince a 37-year-old Bastrop woman not to jump off the old iron bridge. Now, what that is this is a bridge, the old trestle bridge over the Colorado River.
Okay.
Now, it's about a 30 to 40-foot drop from that bridge to the Colorado River. And it's pretty much got a rock bottom, and the water in August is just a trickle.
Oh, got you.
So you're going to land hard, just to put it mildly. It says it started when
the fall won't kill you, but the landing will.
Yeah, it's not the jump that kills you; it's a sudden stop.
Right.
So it says it started when Alexander responded to what proved to be an incorrect report that an elderly woman had fallen on the old bridge. Quote, I arrived at the bridge from the west end and noticed a woman standing on the same end of the bridge. She was leaning against the rail on the south side and looking down at the river. When I got close, I recognized who it was, Alexander said. Alexander was parking his patrol car. The woman made her way towards the center of the bridge. Alexander called for assistance. It says, let me roll this back up here. Okay, where does that? Oh, there it goes. The article's kind of broke up. It says, assistance telling officer, and guess who? The officer he's talking to is Mike Norman and Steve Spencer, that he had a woman in sight who was going over the safety fencing on the south side of the bridge. As I was getting out of my car, I shouted to the woman and told her to stop. Since I knew her, I kept talking to her, and she went over the fence on the bridge. He said, about this time, Spencer arrived and drove Alexander to the middle of the bridge. Now it's kind of a long bridge. It's several hundred feet across.
Okay.
The channel's very wide. Says when I got out of the car, I looked over the rail and saw the woman sitting on the water pipe that carries water to the west side of town. I started talking to this woman, trying to convince her to come with me. She was very emotional and not talking rationally. Said finally I got her to recognize me. I kept talking to her, but she started crawling on the pipe towards the west end of the bridge. I was afraid she might jump. Even if she didn't jump, she might slip off the pipe.
Right.
From where she was it was about 60 to 70 foot drop to the shallow water. And when you say shallow, it's maybe a foot, 2 foot tops, said Alexander. So it's a lot further drop than what I remember it to be. Says, according to, and I haven't been in Bastrop in a long time, says, according to the police report, Alexander talked to the woman for 90 minutes. He said that all the time, the whole incident seemed like it was only 10 minutes. Finally, I was able to talk her into giving me one of her hands. Then, after a while, I talked her into giving me both hands. Alexander said. While Alexander was talking the woman out of jumping, Spencer was nearby, but stayed out of sight. The woman had threatened to jump if she saw any other officer. And, of course, if Mike Norman was there, we can understand what was going on.
Right.
So the Bastrop Fire Department and Water Rescue Team were placed below the bridge on the northwest bank. After she gave me her hands, Officer Spence crawled up next to me and grabbed her, by the waist. She began to scream and drop off the pipe. Officer Spencer was able to get handcuffs on one of her wrists, and we were able to hold her until the rescue unit arrived and cut the chain fence down low enough so we could pull her over the rail, said Alexander. The woman was taken to the police department for evaluation, blah, blah, blah.
Who was the woman?
Vivian Harbottle.
Wow.
So now take a look at the circumstances here. She's raped in October 95. Pat Barnett's running around town saying he raped her. She's talked to her daughter. Her daughter knows Pat Barnett. Naturally, the description would fit Pat Barnett. It's Pat Barnett, and yet David Ward's doing nothing. Then she gets raped by Mike Norman with David Ward, Ed Somala, Kelly Miller, all standing there and letting it happen, and gets assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ed is killed. and within 2 weeks of Ed's death. And in the interim, Mike Norman has been stalking her.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you see a pattern here?
Yeah, they're trying to, they're acting like sheepdog, trying to keep their sheep in check.
Right, exactly. And then when it comes time to, when David Lawhon, who was the original suspect in Stacy's death, that he's no longer a suspect because he won't plead guilty to that murder, then they focus on Rodney. And then suddenly, guess who shows up? David Board and Lisa Tanner, telling Vivian that they froze her sperm. Yeah, well, in David Board's little refrigerator, maybe.
Right.
But not at the DPS. So she's raped in October 95, and her DNA isn't given to the DPS until sometime, in 97, 98. That's 2 years plus later. So why would anybody have any faith in what the state's telling them? And then for Angela Hamby, she's raped in 89, and her DNA doesn't get delivered to the DPS until 97, 98.
Right.
But they're claiming that they knew it was Rodney Reed in both these cases.
Exactly.
So one has to really wonder what the hell's going on. Now, me dealing with Lisa Tanner, I can tell you what's going on. It's hook and crook, because I've looked at a lot of cases that Lisa Tanner's involved in, and the only thing that's consistent is the hook and the crook. The tampering with DNA, the lying, the suborning perjury, the threatening witnesses, law enforcement to testify to what she says, or she'll destroy their law enforcement commission. And yes, she did that in this case too. But I talked to officers that she threatened.
Oh, okay. I was about to say she didn't have to do any threatening when it came to these guys.
See, not all of them, the certain people in the Bastrop Police Department are, they're bad. Now, just
hey, can I add something?
Sure.
Okay, is Missy Wolf in a part of law enforcement? Because when she was there, she had a concealed weapon on her, but she wasn't allowed in the court.
She's an investigator for the Attorney General's Prosecution Assistant Division that Lisa Tanner's part of. But
I'm saying that she was allowed to carry a firearm, a concealed firearm on her.
That's right, because she is a licensed criminal investigator for the Attorney General's office. She's also Lisa Tanner's same-sex marriage wife. Or husband.
Yeah, she wasn't allowed. I don't think she was allowed in the courtroom, though.
No, but when you see the video, what is disturbing is, normally when you see an officer escorting a witness to court, they're not yucking it up and laughing and
Right. So,
but in everybody when she's leading Norma Farley there, she's all yucking it up. When she's bringing in Susanna Dana, she's yucking it up. When she's bringing
leaving
in
with Ed. Not with Ed, leaving with Jimmy.
Fennell?
Yes. Yeah. They were they looked real close.
Right, because in order to get these people to lie, you've got to get their trust and treat them like we're good friends. We'll protect each other. You work with us and we'll work with you. And I don't know how many times I've been put in that situation.
Well, Fennell got in the car with her. Fennell actually got in the car with her. The other
right. This thing stunk from day one. And the way that Rodney's attorneys handled it was atrocious. I mean, it truly was. They should have put both Lisa Tanner and Mitzi Wolf on the witness list, and they should have called them.
But and this is what I'm saying. Here it is. You had this information. You presented it. You shared it with me, which, of course, you also shared it with them. I'm sharing it with the world right now. And so this information is information that is there and has been there. However, back in the trial was not presented. Back in this hearing or any of the other presentations of evidence was not presented. I just don't get it.
You know who else they didn't call that I thought they would have? Ada Fennell, the ex-wife.
Yeah, they had her on it, and
she was on the
would
list,
have been she was on the list, and they should have called her because she could talk about the insurance money that Fennell got. Now, you also had Fennell's cousin or brother. I don't have that feed put up in front of me from the Twitter feed.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about how he and Fennell, they roomed together in that same apartment that Stacy, and Fennell lived in.
Right.
Up until August. Well, let me explain something about that. I talked to the apartment manager in 2001 as part of my research. Now, it's difficult to get, apartment manager to give you information on a former tenant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not going to give it to you. So my approach is, when I called her and and asked her if she was the same apartment manager when Jimmy Fennell lived there, and Stacy, she said yes, she was. And I said, yeah, I find it just absolutely atrocious that you would force him to stay in that apartment that his fiance and he lived in after she was murdered. And boy, she took umbrage to that. And so she told me what for. So I didn't have to ask her a question one.
Mm.
She says, I did not. She says, that lease was up, the 1st of May. Right after her death, the lease was up. So we offered to move him to another apartment, and he refused, and he signed a year lease to stay in that apartment for another year. And I said, are you kidding me? She said, yeah, and not only that, in August, he jumped the lease.
Mm?
And then we started seeing him in a with another Giddings police officer who at the same time rented a 2-bedroom on the other side on the back side of the complex. And they were positive that Jimmy was the roommate with that other officer in that 2-bedroom apartment. But, you see, knowing this, they could have confronted Jimmy Fennell and or his, cousin that moved in with him.
Yeah.
About that signing a new year lease starting May 1st of 96, and then breaking the lease as a police officer, just moving out in the middle of the night in August of 96. And let me tell you, police officer jumps a lease, it has dire consequences for his employment because you're breaking a contract, and that's a moral turpitude issue. And most police officers have a moral turpitude clause in their employment contract. But that testimony told us something else too. Jimmy Fennell has never had any money.
Mm-hmm.
Worked as a jailer. You don't make much money there. Just got a job as his first law enforcement officer with Giddings, and that's not a place that pays you very much either. And he's buying a house.
Yeah, that's that insurance money.
3-4 months after his wife is murdered.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
That's that insurance money.
You're right. It tells you got insurance. Well, I filed a public records request earlier this year for all the insurance policies that were on Stacy. Only insurance policy she had was a little HEB insurance policy, part of her employment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, That's not what this is saying. And you had the defense put on a witness of a woman who said that Fennell was taking out a life insurance policy on Stacy.
Right.
How come the Texas Rangers didn't report that? Because when you're looking, when your spouse dies, the first thing you want to look for is, does the surviving spouse, stand to benefit financially in their death by an insurance policy? And what size and amount, and how has this insurance policy came about, and has it been recently
modified,
tampered with, or added to? Well, in the trial testimony, Carol Stites talks about Jimmy, the day before Stacy died, upping the value of the insurance policy on Stacy on the pickup.
Right.
Now, you say, well, what does that have to do with anything? She didn't die in a car crash. People.
Yeah, I had asked you that question the first time we talked about it.
Right. Here's the way it works. Texas has no fault insurance. And see, I ran up against this in one of the postal cases, where one of the frauds had to do with, with an injury that they tried to hide it under the auto policy.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the way it works. If Stacy was abducted from that pickup, which is why Lisa Tanner keeps shoving that in everybody's face, then the life insurance policy that Fennell had on Stacy as part of that automobile policy would pay out, because it's a no-fault policy. Anything happens that causes the person to be injured associated with that truck or the driving of the truck, the policy pays.
But what does Lisa Tanner have to benefit from even saying that, or going along with that narrative?
She thrives on screwing people and doing it in front of everybody and getting away with it. This is what she lives for.
Hey,
she lives to lie, cheat, and steal right in front of your face and dares you to catch her. This is what I see in every one of her cases. It's the same thing over and over and over. She puts it in your face and dares you to catch her.
Well,
speaking of Lisa Tanner, Kevin did tell you about what I saw her hand to the judge.
Right, and tomorrow I'll file a records request for it. Because, see, here's the deal. There's another part of this. You see, on the first day that Stacy went missing, David Board wrote the day after, once the body's found out in the country, then it's now a Bastrop sheriff case.
Mm-hmm.
So he writes a 4-page report of his investigation up to the point that it became a Bastrop sheriff case. And his last page of report says that he checked the computer files for, sexual assault suspects, all sexual assault suspects in Bastrop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he lists Rodney Reed and Parnell or Pat Barnett.
Right.
But here's what he didn't tell you, that there was actually a registered sex offender that lived in Bastrop, that lived within 2 blocks of the high school parking lot where they found the pickup.
Mm-hmm.
And from this individual's back porch, he could see the pickup in the parking lot. Except David Moore didn't list him.
I wonder why.
Yeah, you wonder why. Well, I happen to have the gentleman's sex offender card signed by David Board in October 1995.
I wish you had
David
sent
Board,
me that.
huh?
I wish you had sent me that too.
Yeah. Now, David Board, having this,
he's well aware of who is around.
Exactly.
And
but it's more than that. In 1990, David Board tried to get another white woman, or a Hispanic woman, just like he did Carolyn Rivas, same everything. The David Board was allegedly alerted to the sexual assault by the human resource officer of Bastrop, the city of Bastrop, for both Carolyn Rivas and another woman. And David Board collected the DNA evidence, and the woman refused to go to the grand jury. So that remained in David Board's control too. It was the same person that has the sex offender, and one of the reasons he has the sex offender charge against him. Now, the incident happened, the alleged rape, and I have the news article. Let me just get this. ARTICLE. I have the article that was written about this alleged rape. And it's David Board. I mean, it lays out, it's identical to Karen Rivas' case in every respect.
That's crazy.
Now, the incident allegedly took place on July 11th, 1990. Well, one of the Bastrop sheriff detectives that was involved in the Rodney Reed case, David Campos, one of the two Bastrop detectives that were involved in Stacy's case, filed an arrest affidavit with the district attorney's office, alleging, this is the first week of January 1996, alleging that this individual on July 11th, 1990, was driving his vehicle in the city, in Bastrop, the county of Bastrop, with no driver, on a suspended driver's license. Well, that's the night of the alleged rape. So how would you know that unless you pulled him over? But David Board didn't learn about the rape a couple of days later by the health authority. Now, in Texas, there's a 2-year statute of limitation on traffic tickets. If you get issued a warning ticket in Texas, within, in the next 2 years, you always have to worry that that officer can convert that warning to an actual ticket, and they can do it. All of a sudden, you get notice that that warning has been converted into an actual ticket, but they can only do that for 2 years. So, if this person was driving a vehicle, on a suspended license in 1990, it would be illegal for this sheriff detective to swear out a warrant for his arrest in 1996. But he did. And Charles Pinnock, the DA who prosecuted Rodney, prosecuted this guy. And the prosecution went from the affidavit in January of 1996 to the end of May 1996, when, do you know who the judge was that was presiding over it?
Shaver.
County Court at Law Judge Bennescu.
Okay.
The one that Vivian Harbottle, after she was raped, went before, and he dismissed the charges, but he didn't bring charges against the officers for the rape and the assault.
Right.
In Bennescu, it's alleged that after Harbottle's, after the Rodney Reed's trial, was dating Linda Sluter.
Say what now?
Yeah.
I saw
Linda Sluter.
I saw a tweet somebody had of Linda Sluter saying that she was messing around. She said she actually worked in the Bastrop Police Department or Sheriff's Department, and said that she knows about it, like Linda was messing around with like county judges and stuff.
Well,
like that.
Linda Sluter also dated Ed Somola's, one of Ed Somola's brothers. after this too. She's a gadfly. And I just recently had requested a couple of months ago, the DNA profile reports on the DNA evidence collected off Linda Sluter for the alleged rape with Rodney Reed.
Right.
They have none. Now, wait a minute. They had this titanic battle of punching, slamming each other's faces, and Linda Sluter has these bruises. I'm going to tell you, they could have swabbed all of that and got Rodney's DNA out the wazoo.
You should have heard what she said in the courtroom. She added a whole bunch of stuff that she never said in the original trial.
Have you read her trial transcript?
I've read some of it, but she added some stuff that she never said.
It goes on ad nauseum. How she's punching and fighting.
I'm telling you how bad it was. It was so bad that even Lisa Tanner was frustrated trying to fix her.
Oh yeah, trying to rein her in because that testimony has to match her trial court testimony, and that's the problem.
Because I don't recall reading that she peed on herself.
Well, Linda Sluter she was put there for a job, and she embellishes, and I can see that she embellished, but you have to take into account what she actually said at trial.
So you saw the part that she started crying?
Huh?
Did you see? Did you read the part where she got emotional and started crying?
Yeah, and I just write those things off.
Okay, let me tell you the real reason she started crying, because after she said the jacket was orange, which contradicts what Kelly Miller said.
Yeah, it was green.
She saw us.
Green and gold.
She saw me and some of the other advocates reacting to her lies in the crowd. That's when she started crying.
Yeah, so she started getting nervous that she was being outed, and she made a mistake.
And then her brother was there. He got kicked out for taking pictures.
Okay, yeah, they didn't blog on any of that. Now the other part of this,
me in my inbox, on my Facebook inbox, about her and talking about he was gonna stick her on me or something. I'm like, I wish you would.
Yeah.
I wish you would.
Now I'm gonna divert here a little. What happened to Roderick after he walked out? After Fennell pointed the finger at Rodney as being the person who killed his fiancée,
and he walked out of court.
Stood up and walked out of the court, and then he was never seen again by the media. Never interviewed, never with Sandra. He was gone.
Yeah, but he didn't show up until at the end.
I mean, they said his nerves was bad. They say he was okay, but his nerves were like bad or something.
Oh my butt!
But he showed up.
He was held. They held him in contempt.
He showed up after lunch break or something like that. After the lunch break, because we had like a 2-hour lunch break.
Mm.
And he showed back up at court.
Yeah, he showed back up after lunch. After lunch break was over.
On that same day he walked out.
No, on the last day.
Well, no, this is Thursday when I was there.
Right, the last day, right at the end. See, after all the testimony was over, the judge let him back in the courtroom, but he was under contempt orders. There's no doubt about it. You see, the judge warned him that one time when he snotted off at one of the prosecutors, and they went to the judge. And then he was banned from the courtroom, and then he apologized, through the bailiff, and the judge let him in. And see, I know Langley, man, you do something. When I saw on the feed, he stood up and walked out. I said, that's it. That was dumb. That was Roderick playing that little control game, of making it about him. And I knew when he did that, boy, it was going to cost him, and it did. That kept him out of the courtroom until the end. The last day.
Yeah, surprisingly, Langley wasn't like biased or anything.
I'm sorry?
Langley actually was unbiased.
Langley was biased all the way through this thing.
Well,
you don't know him. You don't know him.
He was getting on both the state and when the state was arguing,
because they were putting him in a pickle, and he had no control over his own courtroom. He was there for a job. And the job was to put this dog and pony show on and then write a brief to the Court of Criminal Appeals saying that Rodney should get no relief. And that's exactly what he's going to do, if he's allowed to do it. But he's already got...
At this point in time, David, for him to write a report like that, based on even... let's not include this that we have presented tonight. Based on what was seen in court, based on the lackluster, but the show that the defense put on for Rodney.
Can I found that tweet that I was talking about Linda. She said, the lady said that she worked for Bastrop County, and she said Linda was a known associate with Judge Eskew, I think that's the name.
Bitten Eskew.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you a little bit that I do know. Bitten Eskew got caught and cited by the Commission on Judicial Conduct back, I believe it was in 2002, where he was telling women, that was before his benching the divorce courts, that if the woman, the wife they were in a child custody dispute,
mm-hmm.
that if the woman had sex with him, then he would rule in their favor against the husband.
So Bidensky was just
and
a dirty old man.
Bribe. And one of the women did, and then Bidensky turned around and ruled in the husband's favor. Well, the ex-wife filed a complaint with the Commission on Judicial Conduct, who cited and stayed her lawsuit for as long as Benton's on the bench. But when he comes off the bench, she can sue him for, monetary damages for that, for that assault, which in today's age, any judge that pulled that would be prosecuted and would lose they would go to prison. But this is the type of Commission on Judicial Conduct we have, that lets Benton stay on the bench when he's bribing women before his court to have sex with them.
It's funny because she was replying to Lisa O'Lyon on Twitter.
Who was?
This lady that made this comment about Linda Schluter and Judge Eskew.
Yeah, because
she was replying to Lisa O'Lyon on Twitter.
Yeah, well, we don't see much of Lisa O'Brien anymore because virtually all the news organizations have cut out, their comment sections as part of this media control on the media.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it's getting harder and harder to find any news media that allows comments to their articles.
They called out some of the people in the guilty groups that were on the state's witness list that were called to the stand. Specifically,
none of the TV stations have a comment section where you could comment on the. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about everybody's little Twitter feeds and Facebook accounts and stuff like that. But even those are more and more regulated. Now, we need to move on because there's some more things we need to talk about. So we've talked about the witnesses and what the facts are, not what they testified about, but what the actual facts are.
Correct.
So we have those. We know from Joy's previous call-ins that it was not Rodney who raped Hamby, but James Slaughter.
Yes. Right.
And so that's a resolved issue. That's another one. Now, so that everybody knows, they were supposed to have sent the extraneous rapes that they were going to use in the punishment phase, like Harbottle and Hamby, to the defense DNA expert, so she could verify the state's findings that it's Rodney's DNA with these women.
Correct.
Problem is that the records are clear that they never sent it. The shipper, Airborne Express, still refutes that they ever sent any of the DNA that was alleged sent to the defense expert.
So I'm willing to bet that I'm willing to bet whatever Lisa Tanner.
No, Josie, don't, Josie, don't jump in on this because we're talking strict facts now. Now, I had the Bastrop Advertiser's reporter in December 2015 file a public records request with the DPS for all chain of custody and payment records for the shipments from the DPS lab to the Defense DNA lab in California.
Right.
And their response is they have no records. They have no chain of custody, no shipping. See, all the records now that they tried to pass off on me on 2001, they don't even acknowledge that those exist anymore. They're saying there are no records, period. Now, where the hell is Rodney's attorneys? Because if the state did not send the evidence that the court ordered Lisa Tanner and the DPS to send, and all of this comes back to the same serologist, Wilson Young, never sent anything. And there's no chain of custody, no proof, no records, no nothing. The shipper said we didn't do it, we didn't pick it up, we didn't deliver it, we never billed for it, they never paid for it. It's all smoke and mirrors. Where is Rodney's attorney? Because any of that, just that alone would get him a new trial. And it raises questions. If Tanner had all this stuff, then why didn't she give it to the defense and nail the nails of his coffin closed?
Exactly.
Because they didn't. It's all lies. It's all smoke and mirrors.
But this is why I keep saying that the exposure given when you dive deep into the facts of this case, it exposes not just what happened in this case, but it exposes the state of Texas on a whole. And
yeah,
but they can't afford for that.
No, Josie, Josie, we got it. We got it. We're dealing with facts.
I ain't say nothing.
I know. Well, from here up, no, it's real important because what I'm going to start disclosing is going to show you what a scam they pulled with their experts.
The state of Texas.
It didn't go past me. So here's the deal: the defense brought in 2 forensic pathologists to testify. That was Andrew Baker. He's the guy from Minnesota who did the autopsy on George Floyd.
Right.
And another guy from Tennessee. Now, neither one of them dealt with the totality of the picture. They talk about that heat breaks rigor.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they
don't talk
Lisa
about the burn
Tanner,
marks.
Right. Yeah, Lisa Tanner will confront the defense expert and say, "Oh, did you know that they put a wool blanket over her? Wouldn't that trap the heat and dissipate the rigor?" And they say, "Oh no, dead bodies don't give off heat." It's like,
right.
But couldn't it? If it was warm and stuff, it says for that little amount of time, for that 10 or 20 minutes, no. But all of them ignored these burns on her body. And they're more than burns. She's cooked.
Right.
Now,
we talk about that, and we have been talking about that for
more than a year.
Since November 2019, when we started talking about it.
Right. And so where are these experts, that say, there's some oddities here, these burns. Now, we only see these burns. You know where you start seeing these burns now? Over the last couple of months? The Pacific Northwest, where it got up to 110, 111, 114 degrees.
Okay.
Well, people on the asphalt were showing up with third-degree burns to their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's where you normally see that in Texas and all through the Southwest during the July-August month, where you have a car accident, somebody's not wearing a seatbelt, they get thrown out of the car down the road, and when the police and the forensics, they have to wait for the JPs or the medical examiners to get there, and the bodies lay on that hot street for 2, 3, 4 hours. And guess what? They end up with just the type of burns that Stacy has. So the medical examiners recognize them. Now, in January of this year, I get DPS reports from the serologist who processed Stacy's crime scene. This is the woman you see swabbing Stacy's body.
Right.
And the Texas Ranger, that Bayardo talked to both of them and told them that the burns on Stacy's body are slow burns, which means low temperature, long duration. Well, 130 to 150 degrees is considered low temperature. And these burns were long duration burns, slow burns.
130 is considered low?
Yeah, these are burn temperatures. You see, if you're talking about 100 degrees, well, 100 degrees, on the body is not going to burn because the body's normal temperature is 98.6.
Good point.
So 20 degrees above that, 20, 30, 40 degrees above that are low temperatures as opposed to 800, 900. Those are high temperatures.
Right.
So these are low temperature, long durations. It will slowly, they don't burn the body because your body's dead. So when Bayardo says these are burns occur to live bodies. Her body has been cooked.
Mm.
And as Heather pointed out, the funeral home that
right, they had to reconstruct her face.
Funeral, they had to reconstruct the left side of her face where the so-called third-degree burn was.
Yeah.
Because the flesh fell off of it. Because it's not a burn, that heat over many hours, 4, 5, 6 hours, at 130, 150 degrees, cooked her flesh all the way through the bone, and just like the pork roast, comes out of the oven and the meat falls off the bone. That's what happened.
Right.
So these are cooked. She's cooked, and they hid this, all of this, and the only time it came out was this year, to me in records request.
Right.
And it shows that both when they processed David Lawhon's truck in May of '96. Mm-hmm. They looked on the engine block and on the hood to see if Stacy's body had been splayed over the hot engine or the hot hood, because it's a dark, dark blue pickup out in the sun in 100 degrees. Yeah, that you splay somebody's body on that hood out in the sun for 5 or 6 hours, and the hood keeps, metal transports heat, then it would keep going up under her body and cooking her.
Right.
But now here's the other thing that was not disclosed. In this report, Will Young discloses that truck that David Lawhon was driving was stolen, was reported stolen both the night that Stacy went missing and the night Marianne Alt went missing.
Right.
Now, don't you think that's relevant
to the defense?
That's quite a coincidence. It's a strange coincidence, and it's exculpable evidence to the defense, and that also was never disclosed to the defense. These are all new documents that nobody's ever seen before, not even me.
Speaking of a new document, David, here's a new document that you managed to share with me today. And I want to share this email because it's something that we spoke about.
Right. This is where we're going. Let's bring this up correctly.
Yes.
After the two defense pathologists testified, then Lisa Tanner called two forensic pathologists for the state to testify.
Right.
One of those was a woman and she's the most damning of the witnesses. This was Norma Farley. And the reason she's the most damaging witness is not because of what she said. It's because of the title she credentialed herself with. She credentialed herself as the current Deputy Chief Medical Examiner of Bexar County. That's San Antonio, Texas.
Correct.
The reason this is so damning is medical examiners are judges in Texas. So are deputy medical examiners.
Right.
So as a judge, her testimony is unassailable by any forensic pathologist. In order to get at her testimony and undermine it, you have to show that she either doesn't have the title or she has a history of corruption. So now I know this stuff. So I immediately last week filed a records request with the Bexar County clerk for the oaths of office of the new chief medical examiner who was just appointed in July 2019 for her oaths of office, because the medical examiner is a judge, and then the medical examiner hires her deputies and conveys the judicial, by appointment, appoints them deputy medical examiners, and they also have the same judicial authority. So I requested the oaths for the chief medical examiner, Kimberly Molina, and for Norma Farley and all other deputies. Earlier this afternoon, I got a response from the county clerk telling me that there are no oaths on file.
So I have that email up right now.
Yeah, and you have that. You have that my request and the response on the same document.
Right. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead.
Sure,
and
you can post that while I explain. If you don't take the oath of office as a judicial officer in Texas when you're appointed or elected, then all official acts that you do in control of that office are void and a nullity. So all the death certificates out of Bexar County after July of 2019 to today are null and void. They're third-degree felonies. All autopsies were illegal. All defendants who were arrested and charged with a crime based on those autopsy findings and death certificates are false arrests. All indictments where that autopsy report or testimony was given to the grand jury indictments are void. And those people charged can sue Bexar County for every day they've been in jail a part of this fraud. This is how significant it is. It also means that Norma Farley committed perjury when she testified she was a deputy chief medical examiner of Bexar County.
Well,
now,
somebody
else would argue with me, well, no, she didn't know the chief took the oath of office. I'm sure everybody's seen the Perry Mason and know this old adage that ignorance of the law, people say, is no excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no defense, meaning that if somebody raises it, you can't say, I didn't, tell the judge, I didn't know.
Right.
Because the judge will say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I said I didn't know. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. I said I didn't know. I didn't hear you. You don't understand. I can't hear you because the law says I can't hear you, because you're putting on a defense that's not allowed.
Right.
Claiming that you didn't know. And so the court doesn't recognize you and doesn't hear that because it's not a defense. So you better come up with another reason or you're toast.
So
something that you can legally argue, and there's nothing she can legally argue.
And this is why you filed this records request. Now I have your request up on the screen right now. Please find by this email my request under the Texas Open Records Act for the copy of the statement of officer and oath of office for Bexar County Chief Medical Examiner Kimberly Molina, who was appointed on June 30, 2020, effective July 7, 2020. The public records request includes the statement of officer and oaths of office for the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner, Norma Farley, and all Deputy Medical Examiners of Chief Medical Examiner D. Kimberly Molina. Please email records request to you. And the response today, August 2, 2021 at 3:36 p.m., I guess this would be Central Time.
Yeah, Central Time.
Good afternoon. This email concerns your public information request received by Bexar County on July 28, 2021. We have no records responsive to your request. Thank you for your patience in awaiting this information. Jessica Ruiz, Executive Assistant, Bexar County Clerk's Office.
Now, let me explain something. In order for an oath of office for any county officer to be valid, it must be filed and received by the county clerk. They are the record keeper for all oaths of all county officials. So if the clerk doesn't have those oaths, then these people are not officers. And trust me, I've already taken action. I've already turned this over to the local media. And I've talked to all the 4 commissioners of the Commissioners Court that appointed Kimberly Molina.
Right.
Because this is all on them.
But and this is why I said, as I said earlier, this not only exposes what happened in this case, but this exposes Texas on a whole. Now,
yes.
Does it go further than Texas to other states that are doing similar things? I don't know. I don't know the extent to which
Reuters earlier this year did a big expose on East Coast judges and how they have been abusing people of color. There had one judge who sentenced a black woman to multiple years in prison when the maximum sentence he could have sentenced her to was a couple of months.
Right.
And they talk about those judges not taking their oaths either. This was the European press service called Reuters. They did a big expose. But Texas is the worst about it. Now when I gave the... Go ahead. Before we go into that, let's look at the other medical examiner that Lisa Tanner put on the stand. She put on a medical examiner by the name of Susanna Dana.
Okay, and we talked about her last week.
Right, well, there's more to talk about now. Susanna Dana claimed that she was at one time a deputy medical examiner of Travis County, so she could talk about Bayardo and the system here.
Right.
Well, Susanna Dana was the deputy chief medical examiner in Bexar County who trained Norma Farley as a forensic pathologist years ago. And then Norma Farley in 2005-06 went to McAllen to be the forensic pathologist from McAllen. Now, here's where Badinsky comes in. In 2005, I removed the McAllen forensic pathologist that opened the door for Norma Farley because I found the forensic pathologist had lied about his credentials and had covered up the murder of a district court judge who was claimed to have committed suicide a day before he was to meet with the FBI over political corruption and bribery of county officials. And so that's how Norma Farley got down there. But Norma Farley then started engaging in activity that was criminal with the county commissioner. She took over the position that she was actually a quasi-medical examiner and meet with the commissioner's court over budgets and over autopsy suites that she practiced out of as supposedly a private forensic pathologist, but she took on the mantle of a county-appointed medical examiner without any such authority. And all of that stuff's going to come back and bite her on the butt. And who put her in harm's way? Well, Lisa Tanner did. Tanner knew what she was doing by bringing somebody in that was holding the title of deputy chief medical examiner, a judicial title.
Right.
Because without this showing that Norma Farley had lied, she's not statutorily and constitutionally a deputy chief medical examiner. She's not a medical examiner at all. Then her testimony has to be stricken, cannot be presented to the Court of Criminal Appeals, and nor can Susanna Dana's, because Susanna Dana lied about her being a legitimate Travis County ME. The whole time she was in Travis County from 92, she had an out-of-county autopsy services contract just like Bayardo. Bayardo did the autopsy on Stacy not as the Travis County Chief Medical Examiner, which he testified under oath that he did, and that he put and signed it signed her autopsy report as the chief medical examiner of Travis County, and wrote the autopsy report on Travis County medical examiner letterhead. Bayardo actually did the autopsy as a private physician contract vendor. With that prevents him, makes it illegal and perjury to use those titles to testify as he did and to do the autopsy report the way he did it.
So,
is all the Innocence Project has to do is put that before the courts, and Rodney gets a new trial.
well,
Instant. That alone does it right there. Because Bayardo committed perjury, and Bayardo is the guy who set the time of death that all of this stuff's about, that they all argued about. And none of it is worth the time that they spent on it, because Bayardo had no legal authority to do that autopsy and then lied about what capacity he did it. He did it for profit as a private physician.
So here it is. We have the out-of-county
contract,
auto-pay services contract.
Is that one for Susanna Dana?
Yes, Travis County and Susanna Dana. And it says so in
and
the first...
And it's signed, executed 1992.
Paragraph. Yeah, in the very first paragraph, this contract is between the following parties: Travis County, political subdivision of the state of Texas, and Susanna E. Dana, M.D., a physician licensed by the Texas Texas State Board of Medical Examiners. And, all right, let me jump down to the bottom of this here, because that talks about the details of the contract. So let me go ahead and come to the very end, where it shows the signatures. So here they are. This document is executed
Susanna Dana.
in duplicate originals. Travis County, Bell Aylshire, County Judge,
right?
And Susanna E. Dana, M.D. Date, May 11, 1992.
So Susanna Dana what she was doing is, while she was allegedly a Travis County deputy medical examiner, she was committing frauds on all 40 JP counties that she was doing autopsies, for as a private physician for $300 per autopsy over her salary. And she was doing these private autopsies on county time. So really it's theft of service. That's a felony. Because she's double dipping. So was Bayardo when he did Stacy's autopsy. Now, this brought out, in the briefs, killed Susanna Dana's testimony at this hearing too.
Mm-hmm.
So the state wasted a full day, with putting on testimony by people who were committing perjury and were lying. And see, they left it wide open for me to drive a truck over.
Well, let's sound the truck horn. Pomp, pomp, here we come.
Well, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing tonight. And what I started, as soon as I got the response from Bexar County that Kimberly Molina and none of the deputies have oaths of office on file with the Bexar County Clerk's office, I immediately contacted the local media there, and they asked for the documents, and I provided them. They went out this evening. So starting tomorrow, and plus I have another case with Susanna Dana where she did an autopsy 2 years ago in a high-profile murder case in San Antonio that 48 Hours is covering, and I'm consulting for the defense. And all of this stuff will be used against Susanna Dana there. There are also 2 other counties where their district attorneys are investigating Susanna Dana over autopsies she did with them. One guy's in prison serving a 50-year sentence of the murder of a woman whose body that Susanna Dana identified is impossible to be that woman's body. The woman was missing for 2 weeks, and the bones that Susanna Dana identified as this belonged to this woman are bleached without tissue.
Then
they're like the bones you find out in the desert. And anybody that's been seen a dead animal for 2 weeks in the summer, anywhere in the United States, knows that you don't get bleached bones in 2 weeks. And then to top that off, the tennis shoes that come along with these bones and the gym bag are described as the leather and plastic being dried, weathered, and cracked. That doesn't happen in 2 weeks in Texas. So she misidentified, and so now we don't know who the hell's body this belongs to, and because it's not the woman she says it is, and where the hell is a woman who's still missing? So you got two mysteries here, all because of Susanna Dana doing autopsies for another county for cash. Because this case that I'm talking about of the bones, that was for one of those autopsy services contract autopsies. Yet it's written on Travis County Medical Examiner's letterhead, and she signs it as a Travis County Deputy Medical Examiner when she's doing it as a private physician for profit.
And you see, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about the whole state of Texas being exposed. So, you know, let me just take care of this quickly.
Sure.
Affiliates, thank you for your support. NIE Radio, One Harmony Radio, Island Worldwide, the Foundation Radio Network, WGLRO, Oliwap Radio, Dusik Media Groups. Thank you for your support, your continued support. We'll be back tomorrow with Healthy Love right here on the Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew. Fish, we put out a lot of information here tonight. And we just need to wrap it up a little bit so that we can get out of here.
Let me wrap this. Let me try this back around, because I've been taking shots at Rodney's defense team. They actually they raised a question here. And if they're doing what it appears they're doing, oh my God, Lisa Tanner and company, she has problems. Now, and by the way, I emailed you that article while we were talking. So you have the article about the bridge. Now, what happened is the state put on a DPS DNA expert from Dallas. And she's testifying about the DNA on the beer cans and so on and so forth. Now, I'm going to go after her on that testimony on the beer can DNA, because I have some new records in that I've not discussed with anybody yet, so we're not going to discuss them here now. But what happened is, when Rodney's Innocence Project's attorneys cross-examined her, and I think it was Barry Scheck, I'm trying to pull it up here, asked her if semen can remain on cloth, for months if the clothing has not been laundered. And the woman said yes. Now, that got my attention, because nowhere in this case is there a scenario that fits what Barry Scheck just set up, except for that records I got in January this year that are conclusive that the panties on Stacy are not hers. They belong to the other murder victim, Marianne Alt. And the reason is they originally intended to frame David Lawhon, who was dating Marianne Alt, with Stacy's murder.
Right, which we've talked about too.
Right. So the only scenario would fit what Barry Scheck was setting up is those panties are Marianne Alt's, are not Stacy's. And therefore, if the semen remains on cloth that can be detected for months, as long as they haven't been laundered, you just open the door that it's not Rodney's DNA, it's David Lawhon's. Based on the state's records, because it's the state that logged those panties in as belonging to Marianne Alt, not Stacy.
Hey, they also said something. They also asked Rocky Warlow about the sperm being a smoking gun or something. I forgot what his answer was though.
Well, you see, that's what's interesting here. See, Rocky Wardlow had to be involved in having those panties from Marianne Alt put on Stacy. And the serologist at the DPS, Karen Blakely, also had to be involved. They both had to know that these are not Stacy's panties. These are Lawhorn's panties, or these are Marianne Alt's panties. Because when they tried to swab them with the dry swabs on dry panty, they got no response.
Right.
When they tried to put the reagent on the Q-tip that would turn purple if there was any sperm or acid
Didn't
phosphate.
they have that on camera?
Yes.
Wasn't that
on
on
camera.
camera?
Yes.
Oh yeah, they were making a big production out of it, and see, that's the red flag, is that they were so sure that they made sure that she held those swabs right up in front of that camera and put that reagent and put it on that Q-tip and did the drops, and it's going to go Shazam, it's going to turn purple, and and the bands are going to play, and the dancing girls are going to come out, and nothing happened. It just the Q-tip got wet. And they did it again, and they swabbed Stacy's body, and again, and they got nothing. So, in these new records I get in Stacy's body at another location where it's very dark, very late, and they have a pair of dark royal blue panties on Stacy.
Right. I had shown those documents before.
Right, and these are wet, and so they realized that the panties that they had, that the ex-common law husband of Marianne Alt was collecting every time she went out on a date with Lawhon, well, no telling how old they were. They could have been several months old, and this is what appears that Barry Scheck was setting up.
Well,
and even though they're several months old, you still can lift the semen from those panties, and that's what the state expert agreed.
Laundered, yeah.
And so that was the first indication that told me that Rodney's attorneys understood what I sent them. That they looked at it, and they had an epiphany. It was a cartoon, that light bulb would have gone off over their head.
Right.
That was the only thing that I saw on the Twitter feed that made me feel like they figured it out.
Well, all we can do at this point.
See.
All we can do at this point is wait and see. Josie, what was that?
I have another question. So, what is this about this 2015 DNA test that the state allegedly did? Because I keep seeing the Gilsons bring that up in some articles or something like that.
The 2015 what now?
What 2015 DNA?
Some alleged 2015 DNA test, and the state alleges that they did. And
but you see, here's the problem. Based on what the state did, in the first year of Stacy's death, it doesn't matter what DNA tests were done later and what they show, because it shows they've already destroyed the chain of custody and all the evidence. You see, when you release here recent, just in January of this year, the panties showing that they have Marianne Alt's date of death. The panties that are on Stacy when they're processing them on the video are logged in with Marianne Alt's date of death. And then the purple wet panties that they go back and re-swab later that night on Stacy's body are also tagged with Marianne Alt's date of death. And the beer cans, based on the new records I got in January, the letter from the serologist telling his boss to change his results and fax them to Lisa Tanner at trial on the last day of trial on the beer cans, and the beer and that lab report has David Lawhon's fate stamp numbers on it, not Rodney's. That this lab report was put in David Lawhon's file because the results were not.
That's where it
belongs. Right. They were Lawhon's DNA on those beer cans. That's why they put it into his file and hid it from the defense. And so when you start adding this up and this repeated tampering with the DNA, and we get records that show now that there's a third piece of belt that they've never disclosed before.
Right. We talked about that on a previous broadcast
and so,
also.
So when you look at that first day, you see tampering everywhere. You have the high school parking lot. They found the bags of clothes. One of them was in the truck when Paul Alexander found it.
Dumpster. And
right.
Then they
later
disappear.
It's in the dumpster with another pair, and they're written out of, and when Ed dies, they write them out of evidence, and then they add check carbons from Fennell's checkbook that were never found.
Right.
And then Fennell tells the detective the first time he meets with them on April 29th, 96, that in his checkbook was a check made out to the tax assessor collector for the past due registration that Stacy was to pay when she got off work that day. And the reason he didn't fill it in was because he didn't know what the late fee was. There's no late fee. You pay them money, and instead of the registration coming due in another year, if you pay it 2 months late, it comes due again in 10 months. So you never really got anywhere. But here's the problem. The inspection sticker on the vehicle shows that it was inspected in March of 97, or March of 96, so it was valid through March of 97.
David, do you have that screenshot you said you took on the 2020 episode of the truck with that inspection, that sticker showing the registration?
Right,
sticker?
But I have others showing the same thing. And so I got somebody, tag me on a ABC blog over the weekend, raising issues about that sticker. Mm-hmm. And I pointed out that in Texas, if your registration and your inspection sticker come due, within a month or so of each other, that you can't inspect the truck until after you pay the taxes. You have to pay the registration on the vehicle first, and then you can get it inspected. Since Jimmy Fennell bought that truck new in March of 95, both the registration and the inspection sticker would become due a year later, April of 96. And since it shows, the inspection sticker shows 97 on that truck after Stacy's, allegedly drove it, then the registration was already paid. So he lied. And here's the other side of it. He's saying that to the sheriff detective that Stacy was to, when she got off work, was to pay the registration in Bastrop. Well, they live in
Giddings. Why are they paying it in Bastrop?
Yep. And that's in Lee County. You have to pay that in Lee County. So his whole story was a lie. I saw that when I first looked at the case. When I saw that testimony in that report, in that sheriff report, I knew he killed her. That did it, because he's lying about this to cover his closing the bank account the morning she went missing, which is because he knew she was dead. It starts the dominoes falling.
Yeah, he lied and said he didn't at the hearing. But
he
did he
did.
say he didn't close it at the original trial?
Yeah, but we also presented the proof of that
we have
too.
the records that he did. The police chief called, and the bank said he closed the bank account the morning that she went missing.
I'm asking, did he say he closed it at the original trial, because he denied closing his bank account and denied his bank account at the hearing?
But the bank said he closed it, and then Fennell is confirming that it was, that it was closed. And here's the other part of that. During that same interview, right after he tells them that, he tells the sheriff detective that he had his truck picked up that day and sold. This is April 29th, 1996. Okay, here's the problem. In the new records I got in, the serologist Roll Young says he released the truck on the 25th. But he failed to get, the officers that he released it to sign the release form. And so I whirled around this year and asked for the chain of custody, the log in and the log out on the truck. Well,
and
it was never logged in and it was never logged out because they never had it. He sold it, like I said in the State versus Reed documentary. The records on the history of that vehicle show Fennell sold it in Giddings to Gold Chevrolet the day of April 24th, 96, the day after Stacy's body was found. Well, that's when they're supposed to be processing it at the DPS impound lot, except they didn't have it. He's selling it, and before he could sell it, he had it detailed to get rid of all the evidence. So every place you look, the state lied, suborned perjury, Fennell perjured himself, but if Rodney's attorneys won't raise it, it might have never happened.
Right.
But I have the records, and as I tell people, this stuff, when I talk about this case, I'm telling you what the records show. I'm not telling you this is my opinion. This is what I believe. When I looked at this case, I didn't know squat about this case. I'd never heard of it before. I knew nothing about it. And I came in with complete, objectively. Now, I got to tell you, I got a shock when I saw those rapes. That disturbed me greatly because I have 3 sisters. Right. And I'm not interested in helping a rapist get out of jail. So it rattled me. And that's why I went looking at the rape.
Phase.
Huh?
That's the stuff from the penalty phase.
But you see, I'm coming in 2001. I'm just asked to look at the murder of Stacy, and then I find these rape cases all the way back to a 12-year-old girl, and I'm going, oh crap, who the hell is this? And so I start looking at those rape cases and wait, Josie. I start looking at the rape cases, and immediately they start falling apart. I start, searching out the witnesses, and the witnesses says, oh, no, he didn't do that when I was there. I saw this, that, the other.
Right.
And so one after the other, the rape cases all turned out to be fictitious. At the same time I'm doing that, I'm doing the research on the actual murder of Stacy, and all of the state's evidence is also shown to be tampered. So the rape cases and the state's cases against Rodney Reed, this consistency is that every time you look at a fact, you find Lisa Tanner and Mitzi Wolf and local law enforcement lying about every aspect of it.
Right.
And
Josie,
falsifying the record.
Josie, you were saying there was another one?
Yeah, I was saying there was another allegation that we hadn't discussed, and that was Rodney's baby mother of 2 of his sons. Because she was one of the people that they brought up in the penalty phase. Rodney's baby mother, Lucy.
Right. Lucy Lipper, yeah. Well, you see, that one, again, husband and wife fight. Here's what I found out. At the time that Lucy Lipper was pushing the rape allegation,
mm-hmm.
It was when she had a new husband and he wanted to adopt Rodney's kids. And Lucy was trying to use that rape allegation to leverage Rodney into surrendering custody of his kids. And he refused to do it. That's why she testified against him.
Oh, I thought it was because
she was trying to take custody away from his kids, his sons, and so that her new husband could adopt them. Now, to give you an idea of what this woman is like, she's a great mother. I mean, the kids are great. But do you know Lucy Lipper's mother has 2 Christmases in Wichita Falls?
You were telling me about that.
And she has a Christmas for her white grandkids.
And another one for the
black grandkids. And she has a very separate Christmas for her biracial grandkids. She doesn't see them as equal. Now, look at Lucy's position. What it must have been like, with her parents while she's, seeing Rodney while they're together.
Yeah.
I mean, this woman's life must have been a living hell, and of course, it still is. But then you look at Rodney's son and Rodney's grandkids, and they are salt of the earth.
Yeah.
They truly, truly, really, really are. So, all in all, again, what the evidence comes down to, and trust me, you know, I'm moving on all of the perjury that Tanner and Wolf put before the courts in this evidentiary hearing. And I will be going after Tanner with the state bar for this, as I pull all of the records and the documentation out to show that she did it again. And I will be raising what she did back in 96 that has never been addressed, and all of the frauds that she put on the appellate courts thereafter by reciting the same and putting on the same testimony in 2006 and 2008 and, you know, right down the line.
Yep, till no.
Yes. So, no, there's, you know, and I'm suspecting that Rodney's attorneys are preparing to start using the stuff that I have given them and fully documented.
Well, let's see, because we're putting this out there.
I
So,
don't think Quincy will.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no there's no sense in hiding it. And of course, they say, "Oh well, David, you're talking about it in the public. You know, you're letting Tanner and them know." Well, let me tell you what. When I filed that records request on Norma Farley last week, you can be damn sure that they when Farley got made notice that they were looking for her oaths and that it was a guy named Fisher, she picked up the phone and called Tanner, because Norma Farley knows me. She knows my name. And I know she said, "Oh my God, he's pulling our oaths." Well, you have your oaths, don't you? No. What? You didn't do your... Yeah. Can you see Tanner going, "Oh crap.
let me fix this."
Yeah. How am I going to fix this? And see, she wasn't successful in fixing it, because otherwise the county clerk would have said, "Oh yeah, we found them," and they would have backdated them.
Well,
But
too
there's
late
some
now.
people that are
Too late for that
right.
now.
It's too late now. Plus, you're going to see another aspect of how corrupt the courts are. In 2008, all of the medical examiner counties, including Bexar County, San Antonio, wrote amicus briefs to the First Court of Appeals in Houston, arguing that medical examiners are judges when performing autopsies and conducting inquests. In 2009, the First Court of Appeal ruled that the duty of a Texas medical examiner is to conduct an inquest with or without a jury, in essence, all unattended deaths outside the doctor's care. And they ruled that autopsies in Texas are discretionary. They're not required. Now, in 2011, I raised this issue in Laredo, where the medical examiner did not take the oath, and I was consulting in a murder case there. The defense attorney raised it at trial. On appeal, they raised it again. And then the Fourth Court of Appeals out of San Antonio ruled in 2013, I think it was, or 16. Anyway, I have it. In their ruling, they said, "Oh, well, everybody knows that a judge and members of the legislature and the executive branch have to take the oath of office. But people who do autopsies are not people that would have to take the oath," and they ruled that the medical examiner in El Paso, in Laredo, who didn't take the oath of office, you know, that since they were doing an autopsy, and an autopsy doesn't require an oath, so they don't have to take the oath of office. That violated Texas law. Texas has what they call the Constructive Act that forbids judges from taking pieces of a statute and trying to use those discretionary acts to try to defeat the statute. And they also said that there is no other
everything.
Right. And they said that there was no other law, you know, having looked at whether medical examiners are judges. The First Court of Appeals did it in 2009. They knew this, but they were doing this because I was going after about 4 big medical examiners at the same time over the oath issue. And the state had to put, because all the media was picking up on it, and so they had to try to kibosh it, and they tried to do it with this case. Okay, I just laughed at them, and I've left it until now. And now I'm presenting it to the media as an example of just how corrupt the courts are, that an appellate court would violate the Texas Constructive Act to try to defeat a statute on a discretionary act. As the First Court of Appeals ruled, autopsies in Texas are not required. They're discretionary. Well, the Supreme Courts of Texas have been ruling on this for JPs for 60 years. JPs don't have to, the Justice of the Peace doesn't have to perform an autopsy. His duty is to conduct an inquest, just like medical examiners, because they have the same statute. So for the First Court of Appeals to do this twisted reasoning in order to stop to stop me going after these medical examiners' offices, only showed the corruption of the system.
Like I said it again.
And then what did our Attorney General do, our current Attorney General, with El Paso? Well, a couple of years ago, El Paso requested an AG opinion asking if election judges have to take the oath of office. Now, understand, an election judge is not a judge. As a judge who dons a robe and process. An election judge is a supervisor over the elections, different, campaign offices.
Okay.
So the Attorney General ruled, election judges have to take the oath of office, unlike medical examiners who don't have to take the oath of office, and he cites the case by the Fourth Court of Appeals in San Antonio. And I laugh, and I go, you guys, this is like first grade, cover your ass stuff. If you don't think I could drive a truck over this, you are sadly mistaken. It's just that I bide my time. Well, this is the time.
Time is up.
Because this issue on the oaths in the medical examiner's office in Bexar County is where the Fourth Court of Appeals is that tried this dog and pony show. And so they're now looking at this. And it was the Bexar County DA who argued in that brief before the First Court of Appeals in Houston that the San Antonio Bexar County medical examiner is a judge when doing autopsies and conducting inquests. See, so anyway you go, this Fourth Court of Appeals ruling was deliberately corrupt. And then our Attorney General and El Paso County weighed into it. Why is El Paso upset about it? Because the El Paso medical examiner is a Mexican national in the country on a falsified H-1B visa J-1 waiver. And I warned them in 2012 and 13, there are news articles that medical examiners as judges must be U.S. citizens both under the state and federal law. So they need to get a ruling that medical examiners aren't judges, stuck into an official request.
So they look for the loophole.
Right, so they can weigh that. Oh, no, see here, when we asked about election judges, the AG ruled that medical examiners don't take the oath based on this fraudulent opinion from Bexar County. Now, the reason that's a big deal is that 2 years ago you had this kid shoot 22 people at a Walmart store in El Paso because he was upset that Mexican illegals were coming into Texas. Whatever, right. I cannot understand what his real logic was, but it was about, Mexican nationals coming into Texas illegally. So he went to El Paso to shoot people.
Right.
Now the FBI talked to me ad nauseum, wanting to know about medical examiners, the judicial office, and death certificates, and the legality of autopsies that were performed by medical examiners that had no legal authority. And I pointed out to him that the chief medical examiner of Lubbock is a Mexican national. That's a judicial office, and he can't hold it. And I warned the county about this. That means all the evidence that he collected from the crime scene and through the autopsies, and all the evidence that law enforcement collected after the medical examiner released the body, all of it is fruit of the poison tree, and it cannot be used in a trial against him. And the death certificates are third-degree felonies because a non-citizen cannot sign a death certificate above a natural death. Any homicide-related deaths have to be signed by a judge, either a justice of the peace or a medical examiner as judge. And after the couple hours, they go, oh, God, yeah, we see what you're talking about now. And so that's why you haven't seen this case come to trial. They're in a deadlock. And that's why they tried to go around the corner by raising the question on election judges. So, you see, it's hard to get around me. I know the law, and I know the law better than anybody does. And that's why the FBI calls me and asks me and spends, they talk to me 2 different times, the second time for a very long time.
So, just it kind of, it's a roundabout way. It's the long journey, but it's just to get everybody to understand that, again,
right,
the big picture. Yes, this is all about this Rodney Reed case. Is where we're focusing on right now, but the bigger picture is all the players that are involved, the various medical examiners, not just the ones that are directly involved, like Bayardo in this case, but all the medical examiners across the state of Texas.
Yeah, people have to understand, this is a closed system. So every case affects every other case.
Right.
That's so if I'm playing over here, I'm playing over there at the same time. And so if one goes, they all go. So that's why they would, the state would lean on an appellate court out of San Antonio to undermine and try to rule against the judicial medical examiner issue in a case that I'm consulting on in Laredo. And then I've been, I'm after the El Paso medical examiner's office. I already removed 2 of their medical examiners. The first one in 2010 and the next one in 2012.
Right.
So they need to get a ruling that medical examiners are not judges because they hired a foreign national. Now, the FBI asked me, says, well, David, how do you know that he's not an American citizen? It says, you're not, you aren't legally, you can't legally have access to his immigration status. Well, I said, yeah, I know that, but I filed a records request and the county gave him to me. And they go, what?
Simply
and
enough.
I said, yeah, they gave me his immigration. I have all of his immigration, his applications, all of it. And he goes, oh, so you know. And I said, yeah, I know. I wouldn't raise it if I didn't know.
Well,
So anyway, so you see the whole state of Texas is corrupt.
And this is what I'm saying.
And they move as a unit. They play with this court to try to undermine me over here, but they fail to understand. I see this, I understand this, I can read the briefs and go, are you kidding me? You put that in a brief?
Well, here's the thing, David.
That kind of reminds me of how Anthony Graves and Rodney's case are kind of linked, because they had the same court attorneys and judge on their original trial.
Well, Anthony Graves had Galvin Garvey and Lydia Clay Jackson.
Yeah.
As did there's another case that they were involved in Rose Curry's murder in 1990. But yeah, Anthony Graves.
And
I consulted in Anthony Graves' case with the Innocence Project, and unlike Barry Scheck's bunch, this bunch listened to me, and they pulled Bayardo's records from Harris County showing that he lied, that he never was a Harris County medical examiner. And when the state realized that the defense was going to use this, they dropped the charges against Anthony and declared him innocent.
Well, that was the other prosecutor, but that original prosecutor is still trying to say
That
that.
yes, and see, I was involved. The first prosecutor was damn it, his name just went out of my mind. He's the one who prosecuted Todd Willingham on his execution, and he was presiding over the case when the Innocence Project for Anthony Graves came to me and asked me if I could come up with witnesses who would testify at his change of venue hearing that he couldn't get a fair trial in Burleson County. They said that their investigators talked to lots of people, over 100 people, and they all agreed that Anthony could not get a fair trial in Burleson County on a retrial. But when they asked him to sign affidavits and show up in court, they said, "You're crazy. The judges and law enforcement will go after us, our kids, our grandkids for 10 generations. Mm-hmm. So that's when they came to me and said, "Dave, do you think you could get us some witnesses that would testify that he couldn't get a fair trial?" I said, "I think I can, but I'm going to warn you, are you sure you want to do this? Because trust me, there are worse places, for that trial to be handled than in Burleson County." "Oh, no, we need to change the vision." I said, "Okay, said, "Well, we need to know fast." And I said, I'll know within just a couple of hours." So you know what I did? I called the African ministers of Burleson County, and I talked to them, and they all agreed to do it in mass. So all the ministers signed affidavits that he couldn't get a fair trial. So in the hearing, Batchelor was the original prosecutor. So when they came up for the evidentiary hearing, and the prosecutor, Batchelor, turned around, and not only did the minister show up, but their congregation, so the whole courthouse, both sides, were just full of African Americans. Yeah. He turned around and said, "Your Honor, we concede." And so you know where Judge Corbett Townsley scheduled to move the trial to? Giddings.
Well, there you go.
Wow.
And Anthony Graves said that was the worst time of his life, was being in the Giddings jail. And I warned them that's exactly what would happen. Now they then, who was next going to prosecute the case? Batchelor, after that, stepped down, resigned. He didn't want no part of it. And then Corbett Townsley went to Lisa Tanner and Mitzi Wolf.
Yeah, don't even go any
further.
further.
And Anthony Graves' attorneys called me crying, going, "Oh, my God, Dave, you know who's going to be prosecuting the case? Oh, my God." And I said, "No, who?" "Lisa Tanner and Mitzi Wolf." "Oh, they're, I said, "Oh, they're not going to do it." "Yeah, they are. They're already there. Mitzi Wolf's already pulling, and doing this." And I said, "I'm telling you that they're not going to handle this case." "Well, they aren't." I said, "No, it isn't, because I'm going to put an end to it." "How are you going to do that?" I said, "Watch." I filed a public records request just for some documents. Now, Tanner is a control freak.
Well, we know
that. She controls all public records requests, and I know that. And so my public records request is going to go straight to Lisa Tanner, and she's going to see that I'm going to be looking over her shoulder in this retrial, and they wanted no part of it, and they packed up their bags and left. And then Talbot Cordsley went to Abbott as the Attorney General and wanted another prosecutor from the AG's office. He told him no, because Abbott knew that, because I've been fighting with Abbott, all over the state over this stuff. And he told him no, that he wasn't going to get into a fight on this case where they all knew he was innocent, with me coming into it. And so Abbott refused. So Townsley Corbett went to Kelly Siegler, the former assistant prosecutor from Harris County, has 24, perfect convictions on death penalty cases. And when Kelly Siegler looked in and realized, oh my God, they're going after Bayardo, and that means Chahimchuk, the chief medical examiner of Houston, and all the deputies, if they do that, all of Siegler's convictions get overturned.
So Again.
So she turns around with the Texas Ranger, and they declare Anthony Graves innocent without going to Townsley. They just declare him innocent, and that ended it.
And this is what I'm talking about. It's a whole domino of a domino effect that.
And all Rodney's attorneys would have had to do is do the same thing, parrot what the attorneys did with Anthony Graves, and the effect would be the same.
But
show
here it is.
The court that it's all a fraud, and what happens is you turn over every murder case that Travis County was involved in Travis County and 40 surrounding counties for 30 years.
This is what I'm fearing is that they don't want to do, David. They don't want to turn this thing over.
What would Lisa Tanner do in case a new trial would come up and she would have to prosecute?
What?
What will Lisa Tanner do?
What do you think Lisa Tanner would do the same thing that Kelly Siegel did?
No, they'll prosecute Lisa Tanner for this. See, that's why she's so nervous. It gets to the point that if this thing falls apart, the state's going to come after somebody on the prosecution
because
side.
The state doesn't want to see.
They're not going to admit that they were involved in this, and so they're going to hang somebody.
They're going to find a scapegoat. They're going to go after somebody.
That's right. And that scapegoat's going to be Lisa Tanner and Mitzi Wolf.
But this is what I'm saying. This is already exposing the whole state.
Yeah.
So.
But what about the people that it started with, like Rocky Warlow and David Board?
So.
Well, do you think Lisa Tanner's going
she's not
down
go down alone?
Naming?
She's not going to go down alone. And
she'll reach out and she'll grab David Board and Rocky Wardlow and take them with her.
Here it is.
And then Jimmy
there
Fidel
is
stand in all of this if that happens.
Well, they have to go after. Listen, somebody has to file. In my opinion, somebody has to file charges against these individuals.
If they know that Jimmy Fidel did it, if they know that Jimmy Fidel did it or whatever, something's got to happen with him. And
but somebody has to file. Somebody has to file those charges, though.
Or unless somebody would kill him.
Somebody has to file those charges, though. So it has to start somewhere.
Who would be filing the charges?
It has to start somewhere.
See, Josie, you're looking at the emotional side. I don't do that. I look at the legal side. Where can they? How do they have to legally handle these things? And I don't worry about the little particulars, because once the dominoes start falling, they're pretty easy to direct the direction they're going to fall, because when you have the records. So and the people who defrauded the courts were Lisa Tanner and Mitzi Wolf, with Pinnock, and other law enforcement agencies. Well, Pinnock's on his, he's older than dirt, and he wouldn't survive long enough to be prosecuted, probably. And so Brian Gertz may have some periphery fallout, but he wasn't in the initial case. And so it's going to be Lisa Tanner, Mitzi Wolf, Rocky Wardlow, David Board, John Barton, and a few of the other people that were key players. And that because the majority of the evidence of tampering includes them and Will Young.
Right.
With the DPS Serology Department.
So, it's but you have to start. Let's start with what is on the table, and that is getting Rodney home. And that's the focal point. And then, hopefully there are charges that can be brought up by whichever method. Yeah.
Well, I'm not interested in the charges. Those things will take care of themselves.
Responsible.
Right. Those will take care of themselves. What I have to do is take all of the holes in playing this game. And Lisa Tanner she's in over her head. She doesn't have the research files and know these people. I know all these medical examiners. That's what I'm telling. If Texas brings a Texas medical examiner in, I'm gonna have a file on them. And when they brought Susanna Dana and Norma Farley in, well, yes, certainly. And so I know exactly where their Achilles heels are, and I went after them. And now what I have to do is put this out there. So the Court of Criminal Appeals, those 9 judges go, oh, Jesus, This thing just keeps getting worse and worse and worse by the day. He's got Dr. Phil, Kim Kardashian is out there, others, and the media is picking up. And if this stuff gets out, it'll cause a firestorm. So making it so unpalatable for the Court of Criminal Appeals to try to continue this and just throw in the towel and order a new trial.
Well,
and
their best bet is a new trial.
Huh?
Their best bet is a new trial.
Well, no, because there won't be a new trial because
there's no evidence.
Bastrop will refuse to prosecute him because of all of the questionable, because what Brian Gertz will turn around, and Brian knows me, and he knows my records are good. What Brian will turn around and say is, look, we've got problems with this DNA and this handling of this DNA, and you know, we don't believe we could get a prosecution, and the evidence looks fairly, you know, certain that Fennell's the one who killed her.
Well,
and do just like they did with Anthony Graves. It just you declare that he's innocent, and you give him the $89,000 for every year he was in prison, and you walk away and hope that Rodney does the same thing that Anthony Graves did, takes his money and leaves.
Goes away. Yeah,
and goes away.
Hey, listen.
And so
we're wrapping this up.
Yeah.
It was.
We got
we're
more
keeping
into the particulars, so people now understand what happened in the evidentiary hearing and where the state left gaping holes that are now going to come back and get them.
Right. So, what we need to on a whole, generally, what we need to do is keep our ears to the ground, and we need to stay in support of Rodney Reed. Here's an innocent man that was facing the death penalty and is fighting for his freedom. Let's continue along this vein in supporting.
And Josie, you need, since you were there and saw a lot of stuff, because I didn't know this. You were there and saw what the testimony really was. I was relying on Twitter feed from a couple of the TV stations, and clearly they weren't picking up either deliberately or negligently on what was going on.
Well, she was there the last day.
Well, she was there enough to see that Tanner
slipped
put
some
records
documents
before the court.
Yes.
Yeah, that I needed to know about.
And she did ask me.
I was paying attention to that because when she started talking about Pat Barnett and said something about, Pat Barnett was excluded, and then she said, and then Rodney Reed could not be excluded, and then she picked up like 3 sheets of paper, and I was trying to see what was on it, and it looked like it said on the top Texas DPS or something like that.
Yeah, well, those are lab reports that had to be run, and if you introduce those into the record, they become public records. So I can immediately obtain them, and since I have the other records, I need to look at those things real closely, because if Tanner did what she normally does and doesn't dot her I's, I'll find those holes in those documents and I'll exploit them fast.
So I must say, Josie did ask me to pass that information on to you.
Oh yeah, Fish. And I was shocked, and I was glad to get it, Josie. Yay!
No, she asked me before. She asked me before. No, and it had completely slipped me. I spoke to you right after she had asked me, and we went somewhere else with it, and it completely slipped me. So I look forward to you.
I just wanted to bring that up. That was that was an ace. That was absolutely an ace. And when I get those, I'll share them with you.
Yeah.
Since you're the one that brought them to the attention, I'll give them to Kevin to give them to you.
Yeah, because I was like, if she has them, how come the defense didn't have them?
Right.
Like, that's
again.
Well, that's going to be relevant based on the dates on those documents.
That and it goes towards what we've been saying from before. The Attorney General's office has been hiding information and keeping it from the defense. Anyway, thank you guys once again.
Thank you, Kevin.
Josie,
thank you, Josie.
Thank you.
We'll
Fish,
talk later.
Thank you much.
All right.
Y'all have a great night.
You too.
Let me wrap this up. Yeah.
I'm gone. Bye.
All right, bro. Take care.
All right.
Good night, Josie. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. More information. I don't know if we could actually have enough information. But understand, if nothing else, we're on a mission to free an innocent man. He has been tried before for something, accused of something he didn't do before, went on trial about it, and had it thrown out. We had a transcript of that case. And if in fact, let me show you a little piece of it if you don't believe me. Here it is. And this is documents for that case right there. Connie York accusing Rodney Reed of rape. These are the documents. All 411 pages of the transcript. So we have the documents. We have documents. So don't think that this is just for show and people are just talking off the top of their heads or something. No. It's real. We have the documents to prove it. So understand, this fight doesn't end here. It'll be continuing, and understand, we are on a mission. And this won't be the last case that we address either. We'll be continuously doing this, and we have Julius Jones that we're dealing with also. So don't think that because I'm not talking about it constantly that we've forgotten about it. No. It remains, and we'll continue fighting. I want to thank my sponsors, because I didn't address them earlier. Pulse Media Group, they handle videography, photography, streaming, advertising. When being in a moment is priceless, give them a call. 754-999-1140. That's 754-999-1144. They do everything you see on kevinstew.com and more. Thank you, Pulse Media. Thank you, Althea, and your healing heavenly hands. Althea SU is a licensed massage therapist operating out of Broad County, North Miami-Dade, and South Palm Beach counties. Give her a call, 954-655-9000. She comes to you with her table, her oils, and over 20 years massage therapy experience. The only thing she asks outside of paying her is that you get off her table when she's done and go sleep somewhere else. I want to say thank you to Reggae Global Entertainment. Reggae Global will take care of your booking needs, will act as your take care of your tour management, take care of your copywriting, your trademarks, your publishing, your business registration, music production, marketing and promotion, and so much more. Give them a call, 954-804-8199. That's 954-804-8199, or check them out at reggaeglobalentertainment.com. And also, thank you to McNeil Trucking. With McNeil Trucking, you're in good hands. Give them a call, 954-406-9740 for all your trucking needs. That's McNeil Trucking. Thank you so much. This has been Community and Finance on the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew. We'll be back tomorrow. Healthy love. Much love to you. Take care. Be blessed. Remember, look out for members of your community. Your community is not just a development that you live in, but it spreads far and wide. Those that you pass on the bus, the plane, the boat, the train, these are members of your community. Do something good for them today, because you never know who's going to do something good for you tomorrow. My name is DJ Kevin Stew. Catch you on Healthy Love tomorrow. We'll do it all over again. Take care. Until then.
I'm a man of the mission. Man of the mission, yeah. I'm a man of the mission. Get out the way. Come before the stars of the day.
Greetings and salutations, one and all. You're invited to tune in to the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew. It airs on Mondays with Community and Finance, Tuesdays with Healthy Love, and Wednesdays with Real Talk from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Come spend some time interacting in the stew pot, where we keep things bubbling and wind down in musical therapy. The night shift with DJ Kevin Stew is on kevinstew.com, where you're encouraged to have acceptance through enlightenment.